listening to theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
Well, it's a pleasant spring evening. By spring we mean early April here in Middle England, I suppose. And I'm with Diana Bateman, the lady that took us out for our fungi forage at the end of last year. And she's very kindly offered to show us some of the flora that is growing now in the hedgerow, which may be of interest to country walkers as well as bushcraft people from an edible point of view and a historical point of view. So what exactly are you going to show us this evening, Diana?
Well, what I'm going to show you are some plants which you'll find in most hedgerows, really, that are edible. They're not just survival foods, a lot of them are actually gourmet foods, because I don't actually believe you should eat something just for the sake of it being edible. You might as well have something because it's pleasant to eat. But I want you to kind of think of it also in a historical way, rather than just as the edibility. Thinking that in these days, everything is freely available. We've become quite complacent about the fact we can go to any supermarket or shop and get something virtually every day of the year. And if you were to source food from the UK alone, you'd still be able to find something. And that's really due to the fact that we have better techniques of growing plants these days. We also have superior types of plants and lots of introductions of things from other places that we've crossbred with our own native plants to make things much hardier. And this is all thanks to the people from the 18th century who were the ones who were great plant hunters and went out and sourced a lot of these things, and also started the new techniques of growing under glass with heat and growing in hot frames with heated manure, and not only just growing ordinary everyday vegetables but also growing some quite exotic fruits and vegetables. But I want you to go back a bit further than that, to sort of late medieval time, maybe even Saxon times and Elizabethan times, when you would not have had anything in the way of green food to eat, literally, probably from about the beginning of October through until middle to end of March. Now, even for the hardest person in the area who dislikes eating green vegetables, that is really not good for you, because you're not getting any vitamin C, and there's lots of minerals and vitamins you're missing out on. So all the hedgerow foods that came up in the spring were actually viewed with great joy, really, because it was something fresh to be enjoyed.
So this was very much a period of time where celebration and nature would be welcomed, and I know that through the years we also have the other association with things like well dressing and all the rest of it, which tends to sort of celebrate this time of year, doesn't it?
Well, of course, we were much closer to the soil in those days, and of course the celebration was that spring had come, things were, the life force was being renewed, things were beginning to grow again. It meant there was going to be food on the plate again. They'd gone through the winter months living literally on anything they could preserve, and bear in mind, again relating to today, they didn't have ways of freezing or drying or canning foods. This was literally salted and pickled food. So after eating it for quite some time, you'd have been really, got really bored with that. They didn't even have sugar to make jams. So this was the renewal of life, the renewal of growth, and also tied in with the celebration of Easter, long before there were pagan, obviously, beliefs of the beginning of the cycle of growth. So all of these things were kind of linked together.
Okay, well that's a lovely introduction to where we are and how to look at these things now. And I think most people probably listening to this have got an appreciation, understanding of the countryside, and certainly don't want to start taking things from the hedgerows or wild foods and taking more than they actually need or want to just sample things. So what should we be looking for this time of year?
Right, well, mostly you're looking at leaves, sort of mostly salad leaves, but there are some, as we would loosely term, vegetable crops. It is permissible to pick leaves from the hedgerow. It is not permissible to pick flowers. You're not actually doing a plant any damage by removing leaves, but obviously you are by taking away the flowers, because you're taking away its method of reproduction. It is also completely illegal to dig anything up from the hedgerows in the wild. Very often you can find, if you're interested in particularly growing some of these plants, you can source them through nurseries and grow them yourself if you wanted to.
I was reading the other day, actually, taking that a stage further, was that anything like that you should always do with the landowner's permission.
Yes, you should do. Sometimes it's a bit difficult if you're walking along a roadside verge, actually knowing who owns the roadside verge. More often than not, it is the local council who own it. But yes, it's always advisable, especially if you're walking on enclosed land of any description, you must have the owner's permission before taking anything away.
It all belongs to somebody in this country, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's one other thought actually. When picking close to the edge of a road, do remember people walk their dogs, and also do remember some of these things get car fumes, etc. all over them.
OK, so what have we got in our refined natural supermarket today?
Right, in the refined natural supermarket today, the first one that we've come across, the most common really that everybody would recognise, is a dandelion. And dandelions are really quite prized on the continent. They have a bitter flavour, a bit like chicory. The name comes from the French dent de lion, because if you look at the leaf, you'll see it's got this sort of very, very toothed edge, which is actually supposedly similar to a lion's tooth. The French also refer to it as pissenlit, which means wet the bed, and for a very good reason. People believe that if you pick dandelions, it causes you to wet the bed. It's not actually the picking of the dandelion that does it, it's the eating of the dandelion. It contains a natural substance called taraxacum, which is a diuretic. Very, very useful if you do happen to be in a situation where you're unwell and you need to flush your kidneys out. That's the obvious thing to take, provided you've got plenty of fluid that you can take on board at the same time.
And you can make wine as well, can't you, from dandelion?
You can make dandelion wine. It's got quite a strong flavour. Very often most of the recipes are combined with ginger, which give it quite a pungent flavour. It's not unpleasant. I wouldn't get too excited about it, but it's the dandelion heads that you use, and you've got to be very careful not to get in the green sepals with it, because they can be quite bitter. The other thing about most of these particular leaves that we're looking at today is that later on through the year that some of them become more pungent, some of them become quite tough and unpleasant, but with dandelions they'll get a very, very strong flavour towards the middle of the summer, later on in the year. So really it's the fresh young leaves you want, particularly at this time of the year. Further along here we've got some flowers. You can see that we've got primroses and violets, and I'm not suggesting anyone goes and collects those from the wild. If you've got them in your garden you can use them, but they were very often used by the Elizabethans as decorative items for sweets, and they would also sprinkle them in salads. The Elizabethans were quite fond of mixing sweet and savoury flavours together. You have to bear in mind that they didn't have sources such as sugar, so they didn't make jams and things. They would only be using things like honey, but they did like to use flowers a lot in salads and for decorating their puddings. We've also got here some Queen Anne's lace, which is very common in the spring, or cow parsley. Now the only problem with things like this is you must be pretty good on your identification, although you shouldn't make mistakes. If you're not very hot on the feathery ferny leaved plants, it could be mistaken by an amateur for hemlock, so you do need to know what you're picking here. And that has a really delicious aniseed flavour. I don't know whether you want to try a little taste.
As long as it isn't the hemlock, yes.
No,
yes.
It's not hemlock.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of those feathery ones, especially as they get taller. I think to actually identify them, you have to be quite careful, don't you?
Well, I think the cow parsley one is the easy one to do. I mean, I know there are a lot of other feathery leaved plants that you can eat, but I think cow parsley is the easy one because, one, it's the first really to show itself at the beginning of the year. It's got distinctive stems as it gets bigger that have got ridges on them, and they're furry and very soft green, whereas hemlock is completely smooth and more of a deeper pea green with a black marking all the way up the stem. You'll see these black to sort of purple splodges on the stem. So this is got distinctly furry leaves, and so this is can't be mistaken for anything else. This comes a good, I would say, 2 months before really the hemlock. And the other thing about the Queen Anne's lace is most people know it from the roadside verges when it's flowering. Hemlock, when it flowers, it actually smells of mice cages. But perhaps you'd like to have a little taste of that, and you will notice it's got an aniseed flavour to it.
Another one I saw the other week, which seemed to have feathery leaves and whether it comes from... Oh, yeah, it has definitely got a... It just suddenly comes out, doesn't it, that aniseed?
Well, it's also referred to as wild chervil, so that's got that sort of chervil taste.
Was the leaves that go with the pig nuts?
Yes.
Is that the same family?
It's the same family, but that again has not... well, I don't think that's got such a furry leaf. As it gets older, you'll notice the leaf will go sort of almost smooth and shiny on the pig nut, whereas this is one of the distinctive ones with definitely very furry leaves. When you look at it quite closely, you can see it's such a soft green, and you can actually feel that it's actually... Yeah, not shiny or smooth in any way. But that's you know. But as I say, you do need to be careful and make sure that you do know what you're picking. Further along down here, I think I just spotted quite an unusual plant. Not necessarily one I'm going to recommend for a salad, but it's a thing called ground ivy. Now, the only reason I can suggest it's called ground ivy is because it creeps along the ground, because it doesn't resemble ivy anything whatsoever. I mean, the leaf is nothing like ivy. It's not the same coloured leaf as ivy. It flowers with pretty blue flowers. And this is unusual because, in actual fact, this has got a distinctive smell, a very herby, strong smell. Now, most people will recognise this from walking in the woodlands if you walk on it. Now have a crush it and smell it. Very strong, intense.
Yeah, it's almost like mint. It
is a bit like mint.
That's nice, isn't it?
This was actually one of the things that was used as a stuffing, as a herb. It comes quite early in the year. This will have made its appearance about a month ago. And the thing about that was, traditionally in Ludlow, it was always used at Easter to stuff pork as a stuffing. Now, bear in mind again, going back to this thing that we were saying about things having been preserved, the meat had been hanging around for quite some time by now. They wouldn't be up to slaughtering any fresh beasts, so they're going to have to try and make it reasonably palatable. So the stronger the herb and the stronger the flavour they could get into the meat, the better it would be. They obviously have better stomachs than ours because they could tolerate these things. And as my mum always said, a little peck of dirt never did anyone any harm. They were less sort of, in some ways, clean than we were, but they would have been able to tolerate eating meat that was actually probably getting quite rancid by that time.
Yeah, I would think so.
So that would have been something that would have given some flavour to that.
So we've moved further down now, and there's obviously the good old-fashioned nettles.
Yeah, well, that's probably the most common one that people have heard of in the respect of food that you can eat, because most people have heard of either nettle beer or nettle soup. And recently, in the last week only, shown on television, a very modern chef had made nettle syrup to go with one of his puddings, which I thought was quite intriguing. And nettles are a very good source of vitamin C. What a lot of people don't realise is that they don't sting you once they're cooked, but they do sting you when you're picking them.
This has got to be a question. Now, you're a professional gardener and you've obviously got a lot of knowledge with this. Now, the number of different books that you read about, grasp the nettle, run your hand up its stem, grab it quickly, do it with gloves on, with gloves off, or whatever. What is the correct way, if there is such a thing as correct way, or the most advisable way to harvest nettles?
If you haven't got gloves and you do grab it firmly, you're usually okay, but quite honestly, I'd say use gloves. And the other thing is that a lot of people wear latex gloves for gardening these days, and nettles do actually go through latex gloves. So really, if you want to go out and pick nettles and you want to be sting-free, you need a pair of leather gloves or something like that. But nettles are very useful in certain ways. They are very, very good as a substitute for spinach. One of the tricks that I learnt to do with them is to cook them off and use them if you want to make your own pasta. And yes, I know life's too short to make your own pasta, but if you want to make pasta verde, instead of using spinach, cooked spinach, use cooked nettles, and it's very, very good. It's excellent, in fact.
And presumably, like most spring vegetation, it's better now than it is in a few months' time when it's getting a bit hardy. It starts to get a bit stringy, and also when it starts to come into flower, again, the flavour is not so pleasant as it is when it's fresh and young. Well, I know some of the bushcraft community will start to use the stems for cordage and so on.
That's right, yes, they make string and all sorts of bits and pieces out of it.
I know when we've made soup, made the mistake of not picking just the top young leaves to start with. I picked some of the others, and it was a very stringy soup, even though I liquidised it. It wasn't pleasant at all. Yeah. So Yeah, remembering those small leaves, I think.
Well, if you think of it in the terms of, most people will be familiar with, if ever they've got a nettle caught in their strimmer or in their lawnmower, they will know that it will wind around and round and round and go quite stringy. Now, if you imagine eating that, it's extremely unpleasant.
Yeah. Am I right in these are another
Yeah.
source of
That's
nutrition?
Right. Yeah, these are a thing called goosegrass or cleavers, and you'd be familiar with these as being the little sticky balls that stick to you at the end of the year.
Or as a kid, you used to throw these at people.
Yeah, that's right. And it has a little tiny white flower later on. But at this time of the year, when it's quite soft and quite sort of new and fresh, it was actually fed to geese as a good source of sort of food for them at the very beginning of the year when there wasn't a lot about, and that's why it gets its name goosegrass. And it's best cooked. You can eat it raw, which I'll give you a piece to taste. It tastes like peas, but it's got those sticky bits to the leaves so that it can kind of crawl down your throat. So it's better if you gently, to use a chefy phrase, wilt it. But it does have a taste of like mange two peas, really.
It does, yeah. And as you say,
it does crawl down your throat. That's why it is better cooked than raw. It's not that you can't eat it raw, it's just that it isn't always a pleasant experience.
This is, I presume you sort of, you wilt this when you cook it, you just steam it very
literally. I mean,
few seconds.
You wash it and literally just put it into a pan, and you wouldn't need to do much more than that to it. Okay. And obviously, a lot of the hedgerow vegetables that you cook are much improved with a big lump of butter, so I hope there's not too many people being too calorie conscious. And just above your head, if you look here, is another edible food that my mother always used to refer to as a little bit of bread and cheese.
Yes, now I've heard about this the other week. Yeah.
And this is hawthorn shoots. And these also, if you'd want to try a piece of that, it's got that's got what I'd describe as perhaps a nutty flavour.
Now, which part are we eating here? Are we eating the leaves or the sort of the bud?
Well, all of it, the whole sort of shoot, really. You could.
Because I couldn't quite get the bread and cheese taste last time I tried it.
No, well, it doesn't really taste like bread and cheese.
It's just a poor man's bread and cheese, is that what it is?
Yeah,
I think you're being very optimistic if you think it's bread and cheese.
Yeah, I think when it comes to finding foods that work on survival, you're unlikely to find anything that does resemble nice crusty bread and a piece of cheese.
Oh, well, you can live in hope, can't you?
Yeah, you can live in hope. But there are things that you can find that are extremely delicious. I mean, one of the things that I absolutely adore, just down here in front of us, is wild sorrel, which comes in several sort of forms. There's lots of different varieties of sorrel, but this is the biggest leaf sorrel, and I think this is just... I think it's one of the best tasting salad herbs that you can possibly find.
It's quite a peppery, hot taste, isn't it?
No. Now, you taste it and then you tell me what you think of it.
Oh dear.
Go on, and you'll instantly, hopefully, come up with the right flavour.
Silence. Nobody's dares say
Confused you.
Fish and chips.
No.
Yeah, well, actually, there's something that goes on fish and chips.
It's a vinegar. Sort of a vinegar, a citrus lemon.
Yeah. It is, isn't it? When you just bite the leaf, you can.
It's a lemony. When you say vinegar, I mean it is that sort of citrus sort of taste, and I think that's absolutely wonderful.
That certainly adds something to your salad bowl, doesn't it?
Right, one more here. Now this is thing called Jack by the Hedge.
Now I'd like to see this because I've heard this referred to several times in different books.
Now it's not in flower at the moment. It will come up and have a white flower on it. It's very noticeable at this time of the year. And again, have a taste and see what sort of flavour you get from that. This is inclined to disappear towards the middle of summer. You won't see it, although it can make a reappearance in the autumn time. Well, I'll give you a clue. Its common name is hedge garlic.
Ah, yeah. Oh, yes. So just right at the end of it there. Did you get that? You got that as well?
Yeah.
No, I presume it's the leaf which has got the taste as opposed to the bud in this case.
Yes. I mean, the leaves actually can get quite big. These are only just very young. In actual fact, things are obviously, with the cold weather we've been having this year, a little bit behind. Normally they'd be a bit more advanced than they are at the moment.
It grows quite tall too, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It comes up almost in a spike, and it has this pretty little delicate few little white flowers on the top of it. Unmistakable when you actually see it and look at it. But so far you can see that you've tasted quite a lot of different flavours. You imagine combining all those together.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that you've got lots of different flavours coming through.
I mean, have you ever done any research on how sort of the older house cooks for these sort of estates of years gone by would have used some of these herds, and that's what they did with them at all?
Well, they would have obviously had a garden. I mean, on the estates that had cooks who cooked for them like that, they would have had herbs, and they would have various other things that would grow within the garden. Not only would they be used for food stuff, but they would have used plants for medicinal purposes as well as for the purposes of cooking. But a lot of people in the area in which we're walking now who lived around here would actually go around and gather these things themselves, and take them to go in with other things that they had within the household. As I'd already explained, there weren't those vegetables available that we have now. There would virtually be nothing around, so this would be all that you would have.
I know that certainly Edwardian Victorian estates, there used to be a lot of competition between the head gardeners of each estate to who could have the first fruit and so on of the season. But certainly prior to that, I just wondered how the earlier natives really would have made the most of what they've got, whether it was a sort of they turn it into a stew or a sauce or just some sort of garnish.
Well, some of the things would be used as sauces. Some of the stronger flavoured things would be used as sauces. Some of the things that you see around would actually be used as a vegetable, although most of the things that we're looking at are fairly flimsy. So they would be just served as a little bit of a salad, just a bit of flavouring to go with whatever else there was. You would have, as I say, some of the things would be used as a vegetable, but there wouldn't be that many that would have such substance. But I might be able to find one or two for you.
So, this has obviously got a very... I mean, it smells like chives.
It looks like chives. It's just a wild onion, really. Chives are a little lighter green in colour. That's a slightly bluier green, really, more like the onion family. If you look at chives, the colour is more like the colour of grass. If you look at an onion growing, the leaves are a bit more bluey green. This is a sort of a very ancient form of wild onion, and it doesn't grow really an onion bulb, although there will be a little something below ground. But it's the leaves that would have been used for flavouring things.
But you could use. I mean, you can use this obviously.
Yeah.
It's very
you
strong.
can eat it.
Yeah, really. So tell me about comfrey then. Comfrey, I believe, used to be, or is it still classed as a weed? Because I know once it's in the garden, it just stays there forever.
Well, it's not necessarily classed as a weed. It's actually a green manure. It's very useful for putting into your water tub and just letting it sort of render down almost, and using it as a fertiliser. Very good. But and it is possible to eat comfrey fritters, although people now say that it's not advisable to do so. But one of the traditional uses for it was to mend broken bones.
Really? And
it took me a long time to work out how in actual fact you could mend a broken bone, because I thought, well, do they wrap the leaves around the affected part, or what do they do? And it was some years later when my husband Tim had actually had a bad case of gout, and I'd read in one of the herbal books it was very good for helping cure gout. So I followed the recipe, which was to take the roots and macerate, or rather these days take the easy option and stick it in the liquidizer with a very small amount of liquid water.
Yeah.
And just apply it to the affected part, which I did, and leave to settle, as it were. It's a good job I didn't put it all round his foot, because it dries rock hard like plaster of Paris. You'd have needed a saw to have cut it off.
Really?
So that was exactly how they mended the broken bones, was to literally apply it. So if you had a broken arm, all the way up the arm, and it would set like plaster of Paris and hold the arm in position.
And does it set really quickly, or is it something that just happens very slowly and very subtly?
I don't know. We didn't sort of look at it immediately. It was only after a while, when he went to tap it and it was rock hard, we realised what had happened.
And did it cure the gout?
No, I don't think it did, actually.
Well, we pulled off the the main road. It's hardly a main road. The side lane, little lane, and we just got up a footpath a bit. And there's something special here that Dana wants to show us.
Well, this is gourmet food. These are hop shoots, and they are the hop plant, and they are the shoots of the plant that's used to produce beer. Originally, many years ago, the area that you see beyond was a hop yard where hops were grown. They were referred to as hop yards. It's long since it become into disuse, and you can now see that it's changed considerably. But the hops have gradually crept across and gone into the hedge where they continue to survive. And this is a delicacy. Look it up on the web and see how much it is a bundle. Very much, it's enjoyed very much on the continent. This wouldn't have been around so much in medieval times, although at the time of Henry VIII, they were beginning to use hops. Previously to that, ground ivy, which we've talked about as being used for stuffings and herbs, was actually used for clearing beers, and it was used as a substance that would help keep the beer fresh longer. But as soon as they discovered hops, which came over with the Flemish people in probably sort of early 14th century, they discovered hops were better for the purpose. And after the time of King Henry VIII, they were grown quite a lot. And then people would begin to realise that the actual tips of the hop can be used as a food. And they are delicious because they taste very similar and are, in fact, called poor man's asparagus.
Oh, well, we do like our asparagus. Of course, that's the season for that's just sort of upon us now, really. It's just starting, isn't it?
Well, you find that hop shoots come just slightly before asparagus. So you get
as a starter.
As a starter. And then, but you have a very, very small amount of time to enjoy hop shoots, because literally we are at the end of their season now, because they will start to get tough and stringy, a bit like nettle stems. So not that they will sting you, but they will get really, really tough and unpleasant.
So what have you got? It's like a 2-week, 3-week window?
No, it's usually about 4 to 5 weeks, I'd say, because they've been up now for about 5, probably getting on for 6 weeks now.
I'm looking forward to trying those then. Glass of wine later?
I think that sounds very good. I love your term gourmet wild food.
Well, it is gourmet wild food. I mean, it's not, it's not just, stuff to have as a subsistence food. It is actually very enjoyable food. I can't actually see the point. I don't need to survive. I live in this area. I've got a fridge, a freezer and a pantry. And I mean, I can only see the point in eating things that I think are utterly delicious. I can't, I'm not that nerdy that I want to go out and collect things just for the sake of it. It must have been quite a substantial hop field.
It's a shame to see the hop fields all fall away now, because it's, I presume, everything else, it's all being imported. So
yes, unfortunately it is. A lot of it is coming in from abroad now, from other climes. A lot of it now, hops are brought in from New Zealand and in from America, and there's very few hop fields around. Kent still is quite good, and there still are areas over towards Hereford where hops are grown, but I don't think there are many, although there is one small area in Worcestershire as well, but most of the hop fields have now died out.
I grew up in the Team Valley, and when I was first there was field upon field, or yard upon hop yard of them, and
it was also part of the rural infrastructure as well, wasn't it? I mean, you used to have countless people come and pick the hops,
and even back in the sort of 70s, all the students would come down in September for the hop picking.
Yeah, they used to always come from London. I know they used to come from London down to Kent, and it was their holiday.
Yeah.
Their holiday would be to go hop picking and earn some more money. Go and see if we can find you some further down. You can take these home with you and try these.
Well, crossing over the fence here and moving into the field, we can see something which fairly familiar to most people, which is hogweed. But I understand there's different types of variety of hogweed, and also it can be quite nasty.
Well, there is a thing called the giant hogweed, which can grow, well, sort of between 12 to 18 foot tall. It's an enormous great thing, and it can cause terrible skin reactions, and I think they refer to it as scabby hand, and that's the thing to steer clear of. But this particular hogweed is common hogweed. And I only discovered this a few years ago. I knew it was edible, but I thought that as it was such a common thing, that it would be fairly uninteresting, and decided just out of curiosity to try it a few years ago, and it is absolutely delicious. I can't compare the taste to anything else because it only tastes like hogweed. So this is one that you'll have to try. Now, this is one that you would consider to be a vegetable because it has got some substance to it. And what you actually pick is the new emerging shoots with the leaf on it before it unfurls. You want to get this before it starts to flower because it can become quite pungent tasting when it starts to flower. So you've got to get, as you can see there, the new shoots as the leaves are unfurling.
Right, so how far down do you actually take it, as well? Just below the leaf?
You literally pull it and it will come off where it wants to come off, and you just get it like that.
Right.
And what you do with it is you would just wash it and then cook it with no more water than that, as you would spinach. You put it into a pan on a hot heat with the lid on with a big lump of butter and cook it for about 4 to 6 minutes until it's softened. So this is one definitely for you to try.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, you want to get sort of, look, like that.
Oh, right.
You get the shoots coming up like that.
Oh, I see, okay.
That's brilliant.
Okay, yeah.
That's brilliant.
So those are almost too open? Or not too bad?
No, they're still quite, still quite nice and tender, but when you get those little shoots coming up like that, they really are tender. So if we can find a few more of those, I can discard some of the less exciting ones.
Okay, now I sort of recognise the leaves, but I can't quite place it. What have we got here?
This is wild garlic. Very often you'll find it on the banks of rivers and through woodland. As soon as you walk through, you'll smell it straight away. It's got quite a strong smell and comes up with the most beautiful cluster of starry white flowers. And it's actually wild garlic, but it's not anything like eating ordinary garlic. It's quite a mild, gentle taste. It's again another thing that you could use as an item in a salad. Delicious used with eggs, used in omelettes. But a recent recipe I heard that I was quite impressed with was making wild garlic pesto, which I thought sounded rather nice.
So the smell, the pungency is from the leaves. It's not from the buds then. So
No, the flowers are garlicky as well. The whole thing is garlicky.
So if you're going to use this food-wise, I mean, do you dig the bulb up, or do you just concentrate on the leaves?
No, you wouldn't dig the plant up at all. You just really concentrate on the leaves. I grow it at home, so I'm able to pick the flowers as well and put the flowers into salads, which I think is, they're very, very pretty little starry-shaped flowers. The whole part of the plant is edible, but it's not advisable to dig it up. Just the leaves are enough. And again, it's one of those plants that comes in the spring, and because it really is a woodland plant, it grows before the canopy of the trees appear. So by the time the trees start to begin to really leaf up, it gradually dies off and disappears completely during the summer months.
I tried bannock bread a few weeks ago. Obviously a very basic campfire bread, and I just the idea of garlic bannock breads crossed my mind.
I reckon that would be quite delicious. Yeah. It does lose a bit of its flavour on cooking. You wouldn't want to cook it too long. I don't know whether it would work in bread, but it would certainly be well worth a try. I think it would be interesting.
Why not? We're gourmands after all. Well, we've moved from the very chilly exterior of the cottage into the interior. As you can hear, we're in the kitchen. And what are you rustling up for us now?
Well, I'm just cooking off a few of these hogweed shoots for you to try, which is the one that would be a basic vegetable rather than a salad. And it's just been rinsed with a bit of water, and it's got a little bit of butter in there. And I'm just sort of cooking it down until it's softened. It doesn't take very long, probably about between 4 to 8 minutes for it to be tender.
And supper served.
Let's just see how it's going. That's as it comes. You'll probably want a knife to... There's a fork for you each, and a knife to cut it up. So I don't know whether you want to add any more butter or anything. Do you want to give it a taste?
Well, let's taste it raw. Come on then, taster.
Ooh,
let's put it over here. We'll put it down.
Let's move this on.
Oh, it looks great. It's
You can serve me, because I've got a handful of microphones and things.
Okay. There's a tip coming up.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Isn't it? But it
Oh, it's
doesn't
lovely.
taste of anything. There's nothing you could say it tastes
No,
other than.
It's
There is a smell.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
it that
There's
I
a
can't.
definite...
Whether it's the...
There wasn't that much butter in it for the butter to be the
main
The
taste.
main taste.
It's quite a creamy taste, isn't it?
It's gorgeous.
It's lovely.
I mean, I just find it As I say, I dismissed it, thinking it was just terribly common, and it couldn't be that exciting.
Well, I think I shall use this gourmet in my next dinner party. Next time we have friends around, I think I might try this out on them and see what they think.
That's definitely very
Moorish.
very edible, actually.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
surprising. That's why I said to you, it's gourmet food, not just survival food, because it's something that you would actually choose to eat. And you'll think now when you're walking, oh look, we'll go and get some of that. That'd be quite nice.
So how long have people got again to pick this? I mean,
Well, I think that by the time it starts to come into flower, it's beginning to start to get a bit tough then. And you'll judge it by when you get used to it and you've eaten it a few times, you'll know roughly how tender the stems need to be. They do start to get a bit woody, so you can judge it by that, really.
So what else could you use instead of butter there? I mean, sort of, could you use like an olive oil, do you think?
Yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't use olive oil, but me personally, I do think butter does make it, and margarine certainly doesn't work.
And what else we working on here? 'Cause all sorts of...
I'm just all of those different leaves really that we picked out from the hedgerow. I'm actually combining here to make a salad, much as it would have been served to you in olden days, as it were. This is how they would have served it. They'd have had their meat, and they wouldn't. Of course, the other thing that we didn't talk about was the fact that there weren't such things as potatoes either. So really, you're quite limited in all the things you could have. So there would be really your basic salad. I have cheated here. They didn't have fancy homemade salad dressing, although I'm sure.
So just run through what's in there.
We've got Jack by the Hedge in the salad. We've got chervil. We've got dandelions. There's some of the May shoots, the hawthorn. We've also got some of the wild sorrel in here. I would hope to have included some chickweed, because chickweed actually tastes very much like just ordinary lettuce, but we didn't find any on our walk. But the other item that we have got here, of course, is the wild garlic and a few of the little wild onion.
Lovely. And the dressings.
And the dressing is just a basic dressing of olive oil with some white wine vinegar, a little Dijon mustard, a tiny little bit of mayonnaise in with it, and some ground pepper and some salt.
Lovely.
So just give it a little dressing.
A little drizzle.
A little drizzle, as they say. Chefy style, from a great height. And there's your next tasting.
All right. Okay then.
Okay. This looks lovely, just my sort of food. So do I give you a
No,
you
enjoy.
Is that because you want to see how I react?
He wants to make sure you're enjoying it before he tries it.
That's lovely.
And you can imagine now, you see, when you've got all the different flavours coming together, the combination of flavours, that you wouldn't want to eat one of those things, a lot of it on their own. That's why I refer to it. That's why I refer to them as salad herbs rather than as a vegetable. Whereas with the hogweed, you could eat that singly as a vegetable. Those have got very strong flavours. You wouldn't want to eat one of them as a vegetable, but if you put a combination of all of them together to give you different flavours, it makes it more interesting.
It's a bit like the old mixed bag salads you buy in the supermarket, isn't it? But much more original.
Infinitely better,
I think,
because there's much more flavour there.
Well, I'm very impressed by both of them. As you say, the hogweed's got it's definitely a standalone taste.
Yeah.
And that as a mixed salad is particularly with the dressing, obviously, that just sets it off nicely. But certainly you can just taste the different plants coming through, the different flavours. If
you serve that mixed salad with something simple with it, I mean, I personally don't eat meat, but a good steak or maybe a nice piece of fish or something with it, I mean, that would stand out in any restaurant as being quite delicious.
Well, Diana, I just want to say thank you very much indeed for taking the time once again to lead us through this. It's been very interesting, and I hope people have enjoyed it. And I know we'll be meeting up shortly to have another wander through the woods for another fungi hunt, which I'm also looking forward to. But thanks very much indeed for the time, and I'm sure everybody's enjoyed it.
Thank you.
This independent programme has been brought to you by theoutdoorstation.co.uk.